first exec meeting with the rest of the C-suite, and that's when I realized, we weren't in Kansas anymore, Karl. It was the bomb was dropped. We're going to need to do a riff at the end of the month, and I'm like, what?
Welcome back, everybody, to the Revenue Problem Solvers podcast, which is built for revenue leaders who aren't afraid to say they're stuck and they need a real answer. I'm Karl Ortmanns, and on today's episode, we're going to dive into a topic that, well, it seems like it's one that we're constantly reviewing and hearing about. It's the topic of scaling. Now, today's podcast is sponsored by the fantastic team at Virtual Causeway. Imagine your sales team spending less time chasing and more time closing because buyers already know your name before the first call. Now, that's exactly what Virtual Causeway does. They help B2B companies get found earlier in the buying process by the right people through the right channels that actually influence decisions today. What was the result? Well, it's fewer cold calls, it's better conversations, and it's pipeline that moves faster. You can visit them at virtualcauseway.com, and don't forget to mention the show for a special rate. When a business is broken at the revenue level, the instinct is to fix the strategy. New playbook, new tech stack, new metrics. Now, here's what my guest today has actually figured out. My guest today is Steve Shauck. Now, here's what Steve has figured out after 2 decades of being in that room. The strategy isn't usually the problem. It's the people, and more specifically, who's actually leading them. Steve started in banking. He moved into tech. He built global sales teams at GE Digital. He ran and led the funnel acceleration sales team, or I like the acronym FAST, along with the global GTM strategy and sales plays around the GTM strategy at Oracle, where he built that team from scratch. Then he spent the next part of his career stepping into the CRO seat at companies that needed to grow fast and under PE pressure with 2 successful PE exits. Today, he operates as a fractional CRO, which means he's the person companies call when they need someone who's already been through that fire. Steve, I could go on and on. However, welcome to the podcast, and thank you for being here.
Thanks, Karl. Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
I've been looking forward to this one for a long time. Steve and I have had lots of chats, and we got a chance to be classmates through Pavilion CRO or CMO course, I think it was. We've taken so many together, but I'm glad we were able to do this. So let's kick off and tell everybody a little bit about your world. Share a little bit of context. What industries or verticals do you work in today? What are the selling motions? What size companies do you work with?
Yeah. So industry verticals predominantly in the data analytics sphere or the very near adjacencies. So you think med tech, fintech would be near adjacencies. Anything that's in, where data is kind of moving the needle. You could get into ERP world as well, supply chain. So those would be the kind of vertical industries. I tend to stay away from Fed SLED DoD, just a beast there that I'm not I don't like playing that game. So
What,
I stay away.
the
Fed SLED
government
DoD,
opportunities?
yeah, man, it's brutal. I did that early on when I was when I first cut in, and it just they're you're at somebody else's destiny, and I don't like that too much. So predominantly sales-led growth. I try to have that be part of the remit. The product-led growth is interesting, but again, I'm more interested in sales-led growth because we're talking about people. We're talking about helping people become the best versions of themselves and watching them grow in their career. So yeah, those are kind of the industries and the growth. And then the last question, I'm sorry, Karl, was the thought.
What size companies do you work with?
Yeah, I've been really focused in earlier stage of late, so founder led through maybe B round, in the maybe 5 to 50 million range. The mass, Fortune 100, Fortune 500. Those days are kind of behind me at Oracle and GE and such. So really find myself helping the founder led motions the most. Very enjoyable there.
And it's perfectly aligned to the topic of today, right? Scaling.
Yeah,
How do you get out of
yeah.
founder led into scaling? So which is great. And so actually how we got to today's topic is Steve and I had a prep conversation. Well, actually, we had a couple because we talked about a whole bunch of different things, and it was a lot of fun. So we had two, and the conversation was so much fun. But we talked about scaling, and it led us to the topic of executive recruitment and business turnaround. There's a lot to unpack here, and so if we kick off here, and hopefully this is a good place to start, take us back to a time where you took a role and the reality didn't match what you were sold. And I
Mm,
mean by that of like you were recruited to do a thing. What was the first moment you knew that something was off?
yeah. There's a couple. Some positive, some let's just say I had hair. So yeah, it maybe wasn't as gray in my beard. Um, yeah, I remember this one, and man, I remember getting hit up by the exec recruiter, and it was, oh man, this was early in 20, at the post COVID. It was the world was kind of coming back around, and it was maybe January, February. And I had some travel coming up, and I'm like, hey, that sounds really interesting. I'm gonna be on the road for 2 weeks, and they're like, profile is really good. I'll wait. And I'm like, okay. I was gainfully employed, and we were doing really fun things, and I got back, and the recruiter followed up, and they're like, "Hey, let's chat if you're interested in them." And I'm a fan of take the call, always take the call. It's my guidance to early in their career or late in their career, take the call. And we did, and that was, I don't know, January, February, and one call led to another, and I wasn't moving with speed. I was being methodical through the process. Again, I had a good thing going, and the layers of the cake they were building as we were talking, it was becoming the most beautiful cake that I'd ever heard of. Right? It was like they're doing these things. They've grown like this post COVID. The team looks like this. They have partnerships with some of the iconic logos that you want to have partnerships with. Um, they're on the cusp of doing a deal of significant size with PE, and so kept having those chats, and then the chats finally went over to the C-suite at the firm, and going through that, there felt like good alignment, felt like there was some tailwinds, no headwinds, and asked for the due diligence package, right? You're looking for data. We're all data inspired, or hopefully we're data inspired these days. And so you're asking for the data, and you get varying forms of it. You're looking for pitch decks and things like, what are you sharing with potential suitors, and so on and so forth. And um, all of it looked real good, right? And the stars kind of aligned, and the offer was the offer was okay at first, and we talked through a couple components, and offer became one that on paper I just couldn't say no to.
Mhm.
It was one of those kind of moments. It's like, yeah, that looks right. That's enough to make me, the juice looks like it's worth the squeeze. Let's go. And went head in, all in on that, and landed. And week one was typical. I wanted more time off in between roles, and that was scheduled. And then I got the magic phone call from HR. Hey, can you start earlier? A lot of exciting things are going on, and I'm floating in the pool. I live in Naples, and I'm like, I guess 2 less weeks of floating in the pool. Sure. So I pulled in sooner, and then so week one was good, getting to meet everybody. I kind of used the 2 eyes, 2 ears, one mouth ratio. It's like look a lot, listen a lot, talk a little. And then I got to HQ in week two, first exec meeting with the rest of the C-suite, and that's when I realized, we weren't in Kansas anymore, Karl. It was the bomb was dropped. We're going to need to do a riff at the end of the month. And I'm like, what? Huh? That, like, A plus B no longer equaled C.
Right.
And it went into um, head on urgency kind of fire drill mode from that point on. Right. It was, and it was meaningful. I mean, it was, they had headwinds that weren't, either I didn't uncover them well enough, or maybe I got the shiny package and not the package that you could lift the hood and dig a little bit in, and realize that there were some underpinning issues. Whichever way it was, the path in front of me looked a lot different than the one that was sold to me through the recruiting process. Um, Benefit to me, I like doing hard things. So you just cut the sleeves off and lean in, right? And so that's what we had to do. And um, it was tough. It was painful. It was a lot of work, and it was meaningful work, but it was a lot of work, and it was the ugly stuff. And
Mm,
I'll never forget one of the team members said, if we're going to make a cut, cut all the way to the bone. Let's only do it once. And that guidance wasn't taken by the CEO, and we only kind of cut through the clear coat. And there was more to come. And
mm.
so those things were some lessons that came out of that. But the kind of utopian view of we're going to have this PE round 45 days after that all evaporated, right? I mean, everything was smoke and mirrors, and it was a very, very difficult, um, I'll say, internal lesson to learn, right? You got to take these on as a person who thinks they're doing a good job with due diligence, and I think we all have gone through this where we started to believe what we were being told, and the package that you're getting says the same thing, and but you had to look in the mirror and be like, damn, man, did I sign up for this? Is this what I want to do? And Thankfully, I said yes to myself, and I had great support from my mentors and coach and my family, and they knew it was going to be some gnarly days. And um, man, we did some hard work there. That was good times, but yeah, tough sled.
So there's a couple of really interesting topics you just called out. And the one thing that maybe I'd like to ask you to start is that due diligence package. So and I'll ask this from the perspective of curiosity for others that are maybe
Mhm.
listening and go, you know what? I'm interviewing for my first VP level, my first CRO level, my first C, whatever the title is. What does that due diligence package look like? And what are you asking for? The flip
Yeah.
side of that coin is what do you actually get back?
Yeah. What I wanted was let's start there and what I got, right?
Okay.
Even under NDA, what I wanted was a full P&L package, right? I wanted to see it. I wanted the earnings, gross earnings, all the way down to where was EBITDA, all of those components. I wanted to see it year over year, in detail. I wanted as much line item detail as I could get to um, end up with a story that so I wanted to understand pipeline. I wanted to understand marketing impact. I've never had a team that has been um, exceptional without a strong partnership in marketing. Whether I owned marketing or not, marketing had to be the yin to the yang, and I
Mm,
passionately believe that. There, so you're looking for those things. You're looking for client facing decks. You're looking for kind of event strategy. You're looking for it all, right? And you ask for it all, and then what you get back is, Carl, typically a subset of that, and sometimes it's snippets. So you can't actually click into the data, or screen grabs, things of that nature. Sometimes they're kind of codified PDFs and things of that nature. And that was more of this scenario, right? You got a forecast, if you will, of pipeline and conversion and such. You got a forecast of the P&L, maybe not the real time actual P&L. And so I think if I could get my DeLorean out from Back to the Future and go back in time, I would have probably pushed a little harder on, hey, I see that these are the forecasts. Can I get the actual? Can I get,
mm,
how close to the actual can you get? Because forecasting, I can forecast I'm going to win the lottery tomorrow. But I mean, how many companies are missing their forecast, right? How many reps
yeah.
miss their forecast, right? So that was, again, looking back, hindsight, we're all champions with it. That's a moment where it's like I could have pushed a little bit harder on the packet to make sure that A plus B was equaling C.
Mm.
So again, what you ask for and what you get are not the same thing.
When you ask those questions, will they actually, or have you been able to get access into their CRM package before? Is that maybe something that is a lesson learned?
Yeah, so I've been able to get, again, it's usually some form of a download in the maybe the eyes wide open piece is the download can be manipulated. And I'm not saying that everybody does that, right? But you can
Mm-hmm.
take the ugly things out, you can take the beautiful things out, you can paint a very interesting picture. And so this is why I talk about being inspired by the data versus data driven, because you can manipulate data to drive you to do something. But if you just take the data and consume it in its form, it should inspire you to do something. And so again, what I was getting inspired me to say, yes, this is a thing that's worth going after. Um, but again, going, using my crystal ball that I didn't have at the time, there's an opportunity to maybe push a little bit harder there and say, hey, this is good. I like the forecast. This is cool. But we're in Q2 now. Why don't you give me up to actuals in Q2? Because Q2 is where the wheels fell off and it got ugly quick.
Okay. So some of the things you don't get to see are those, like you said, it's a, I don't know if the analogy is the pages don't match the cover is
Yeah,
sort of a,
that works.
right. Like you look at a book and you're like, oh, this book looks great, great cover. Then you get into, you're like, okay, this is not what I
Yeah,
thought
yeah,
this was going to be.
yeah.
And so I want to come back to I want to come back to the recruitment a little bit later,
Mhm.
but I want to touch on it. But even in some of this, so now you get into the role, and I've actually had a similar situation where I've got a chance to join a company. I was, similar thing, and my focus all of a sudden quickly turned into something that I didn't actually have visibility into. And now I had to build a new plan pretty quickly and try to wrap my arms around something that was actually not discussed as part of
Mm.
the recruitment phase. And so you're smiling, and I'm guessing that you have something here. So when you started to get into that riff and you had to go through it, like, what did that look like? How did that change your plans? And how did the relationship internally with the people that were recruiting you maybe change?
Yeah. Man, yeah. How did like you got a mindset going into something, right? Everybody's excited when they're starting a new gig, right? Whether it's a new fractional role, whether it's, starting their own podcast, whether it's a new full-time role, whether it's picking up a hobby, we're always excited. It's like, I'm doing this new thing, right? And you spend time, as I mentioned, floating in the pool, and so your mind is starting to do the exercise of, okay, this is what I know, this is what I believe, because this is what I've been told and seen. And so you're starting to think about what is it going to look like in the early days. And I'm going into that, I was expecting to have this critical mass of really talented individuals, as I was informed, who were hungry at winning, and so on and so forth, that we were going to build on top of and scale. Right? Remember, PE was supposed to be, the company was supposed to do this equity raise and exit and post 45 days and so on and so forth. And so now you come in and you're in scale mode, right? In your head, you're like, okay, going to come in. I need to look and see what's working, what's not working. Where do they have gaps from somebody, outside of the walls? So, from a market perspective versus an institutional perspective, thinking about, where can you add, you know, gasoline to what sounded like a really great fire, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, Getting there and going through that conversation in week two, your mind goes to, okay, this is going to be a full teardown and rebuild, which is okay. Built things from the ground up, rebuilt things from the ground up, so that's okay. But the weeks of preparation and the thoughts and the ideals that I was having coming into the role, I had to get them, take them out of my head, put them in the trash can, like trash can on fire, and throw it away because it was all gone, right?
Right.
And so then you have to like mentally shift, um, to, okay, we're going to be getting rid of people, so you're going to have this view, and you got to be comfortable with it, right? You're going to have this view, this view that the greater team is going to have of you, that you are an executioner. So get your hood out, get your scythe out, your scythe, and that's, you're going to have to just deal with that. I have big shoulders, so I can deal with that. And then you have to rebuild, and so you have to be able to craft a story. But that also means that while you're doing those things, you have to go do, so you're working in the business and you're working on the business at the same time. It's a very interesting
Yeah.
opportunity to do that. And so you go and you start working on sales motions, and you're actually leading the charge on some sales, or you're closing them yourself. And that's great because it gives you a perspective, so you can tell future hires, what this thing actually looks like and how does it really get sold and so on and so forth. So there's some credibility that comes with that, that you're not just in the, the ivory tower, that you've walked a few days in the shoes that they're going to be in, which was nice, but that was at the expense of some really great humans.
Mm-hmm.
So and then the other question that naturally people have is, well, if you're tearing it down and then you're rebuilding it, why didn't you keep more of the people that you let go? Well, you had to break the machine, basically. You had to break it, right? You had to get rid of the cost so you could then see exactly what you needed, and you would re-architect the GTM function, right? You maybe didn't need all of those account executives, or you didn't need all of those account managers, but a zebra cannot become a draft. And what I mean by that is, most account managers are really good at holding on to a subset of accounts and growing those accounts. It's a sales job, right? You're asking for business, you're asking for money, you're uncovering opportunities, but that's a lot different than prospecting, taking early stage leads, converting them into real opportunities, and migrating that through a pipeline. Those are a little bit different. And so
Yeah.
I use zebra and giraffe. You have a line on the back there. The lion kills all, but that's okay, right? And so you have to you have to look at those things and think about, what does that makeup look like if you even need those roles, right?
Yeah.
Or what roles are you missing? And now in 26, now we're thinking about what agents are missing, right? What elements of tech can we actually put into the org chart to help our team be the best versions of themselves? But then AI was not as prevalent, right? It was starting to be. I mean, we're then was pre Chat GPT, right? I mean, that had not hit the market yet,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so we were still leaning on automation through tools like Outreach, or their less worthy competitor at one point in time, who I don't like, as you can tell, and using Zoom Info and tools like that, right? The world's changed,
Yeah.
but it's the same exercise, and so you strip it down so you understand what you actually have, and then you build it back up. It's no different than if you're rebuilding a car. You're going to take it all apart. You're going to strip all the clear coat, all the paint off. You need to see, do I have Bondo anywhere? Is there cancer on the body anywhere? Do I got to take care of that? You're going to take the. It's the same thing, and you're going to put it back together. But that allows you to put the pieces in play that you need.
Mm-hmm. I
So,
really like how you called this set. And actually, Stephanie, because you said the lion, Stephanie Valenti, also a Pavilion member, she was on the podcast and she talked about this exact thing about account management, and she used lions and zebras, and
mhm,
zebras are more, gatherers, or hunter, like lions are hunters, and they're
yep.
gonna go. You bring up an interesting topic and an interesting point. When you have to rebuild and break them, rebuild or break the machine, this is where you get a really good look, in my opinion, of what are the talents of the team, and does everybody fit?
Yeah.
And because when you start to scale, and Mark Roberge was on with me, and we talked about the science of scaling because his new book is out, and we were talking through this. But one of the things we talked about is like the people skill sets of where they are and where the businesses don't actually always align.
Yeah.
As he said, he's like, well, why can't I just go and sit with the CEO and jam like I used to and get the discount that I wanted? Like, why do I have to follow these processes? Sometimes, unfortunately, it gives you a chance and a perspective to go, hey, you know what? That person has actually missed their targets for 8 quarters in a row. But they have the most context about the business. Okay, how do we adjust that? Are they in the right seat? Because sometimes their skill, like having them in the team, is important, but maybe not in that same role. But it sounds like it gave you a chance to do, and maybe I'm mishearing this, but it almost sounds like you looked at it and said, okay, do I need more account management to grow my install base and protect the house, so to speak? Or
Mhm.
do we need to build new funnel because something's broken? Because somewhere in the machine, it's broken, is what it sounds like.
Yeah.
And it gave you a good perspective to go and take a look at skill sets and also outcomes of what's needed. So when you went and did that, were you able to move people around, or did you have to say, you know what, unfortunately, this isn't the right place, this isn't the right time, or the right your skill set isn't where we need to be for this next phase of the company
Yeah.
growth?
Yeah. Um, Thankfully. not every baby went out with the bathwater, right? We were
Okay.
able to retain a very small nucleus of the team that I inherited. And there absolutely was a scenario where there was one team member, he was on the account management side, and I remember when I was talking with him, he's like, I have no clue why I was hired in for this role. I've never done this. I've always been an account executive hunting and so on and so forth. And he had, great pedigree. I mean, massive logos that he had worked at. And his personality was right. And he's like, I'll do whatever you guys need me to do. I'm happy to be here. I'm excited about the opportunity. Um, but if you're asking me what I think I should be doing, it's over there. And
Mm,
here's why. And he walked me through how he attacks, whether it's a territory or a vertical or leads. It's just how and you could see that this guy had spent, 15 years as an AE hunting and winning deals. Um,
hmm,
and so we made the change. Um, and that there were some wins quickly, and he had a tough Q1 the following year, and we had multiple conversations, and there was nobody working harder on his craft, his soft skills, his hard skills, like the actual industry skills, and then he caught fire, and it
hmm,
was no looking back. He had a solid Q2 and the best H2. He ended up making his entire year number. His H2 was that strong. But he gave, you got to give them enough runway to, if they're doing the things, to allow them to matriculate into real deals when they're
hmm.
doing the work. And he came out of the gate just swinging, and he's since parlayed that into another role at a fantastic company and is doing just great things. We keep in touch. But it's again, you got to look at the elements of the roles, the skills of the team members, and our jobs as leaders is to help the team become the best versions of themselves. And sometimes, to your point, Karl, you got them in the wrong chair. They're
Hmm.
just in the wrong chair, and if they're open and receptive to moving chairs, you move them,
Yeah.
and you give them the opportunity to go be that best version of themselves. And it worked out brilliantly for him.
I agree. And there's there's people that I've had a chance to work with and move them out of one role into actually out of an account management role and moved them into a RevOps role and
Hmm.
like flourished and even like sitting with them saying, "Hey, I actually I think you're in the wrong role." And was like, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "I think you're better over here." And it was the conversation of like, "I think, do you see where you get so passionate and listen to you talk and etc." And now, obviously, well, not obviously, but now doing super well, has done some great things. And I mean, can't be more excited for them. And sometimes it just takes a different perspective, right? Hey, did you realize you're really good at the thing over there? That has anybody ever told you that thing? Oh, no, I haven't. So, but that talent ability and maintaining talent's important. So when you had to make the changes and you restructured everything, was there any different or any in ahas when you're like, oh, they said this thing as part of the recruitment, but I didn't actually connect the dots to the thing that I'm now having to do and correct? Or was it quite literally like, hey, they showed me movie A, but I got to see movie C?
Yeah, yeah, it was. I went to go do A, and it was really C, right? It was like I went to, watch Nirvana, and I got Weird Al Yankovic instead, right? It was that kind of, situation, and again, it wasn't total doom and gloom. Do I feel like I was misled? Yeah. Do I feel like I was lied to? Probably not, right? Because it was forecast, right? I was showing a
Mm.
lot of forecast stuff. Is that me splitting hairs? Probably, because I like to give people the benefit of the doubt. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if I had that DeLorean we mentioned earlier, if I would say yes to that dress again.
How did it change your relationship, or how did you work with the other leaders inside the business? Because when you make wholesale changes at times, that means there's typically a business restructure, or you have to make
Yep.
some big changes. How did you all connect and build the strategy, or did you lead that strategy? Say, "Hey, I got this. This is what we're gonna do. Let's go."
Yeah. So from a GTM, it was lead and then rebuild strategy with as much insight and influence, because you want to try and you want to bring everybody along the journey, right? As much as you can. So you definitely keep the rest of the C-suite in the tent, and you pull on them when and where you can, especially the team members that have been there years. And look, they may have been there, 5 years, 10 years, whatever. They can give you all the insights in the world. It's your choice to do with it as you please. You
Mm.
can say, oh, that's a really good point. Let's not forget about that. Or you're an idiot, and throw it out the window, and that's okay, right? But you bring them along, because you want to be part of the group. There was definitely um, strong relationships with others, and then some were weaker, and that's, I think, natural um, in any business, right? And you think back to any of the ones that you've been at. You may have had pick your title that you were really tight with, even though you were the FNG, which is fantastic new guy, just in case you didn't know what the acronym stands for, or fantastic new gal, just in case, right? But you're not one of the OGs, so you're always trying to catch up, right? And when they tell about the stories of this time back at this place, and you're always kind of on the outside, so you have to try and build some of that camaraderie and teaming with them as best as possible. And some lean into it, and some don't. And your job as the new person is to be a sponge, and be like a new sponge who takes the water and absorb as much as you can, and try and be part of the outcome, even if what you were told or sold is a little bit uglier than what you wanted.
Yeah. I think we could probably carry on. There's definitely some lessons learned inside of here. But if we go back to the topic at like the executive recruiting side,
Mm,
and I'm curious for your perspective, because the executive recruitment is happening pretty pretty regularly. I
mhm.
know there's a little bit of doom and gloom in the world with AI changing everything, and people still need to be able to operate and these other things. But also people need leaders. And so in that leadership role, when you do have the executive recruitment, and I'm sure you're being constantly recruited, you're super talented. How are you seeing executive recruitment change?
Yeah. Um, it's interesting. Man, that's a big Carl. We could have talked about that for 2 hours.
I know, and maybe
Eh,
there's another part to this, but
yeah,
it's
yeah,
I think if I didn't ask you the question, it would be something that I go, I should have asked him about that.
yeah. I think let me see if I can break it down in traditional Steve fashion into three or fours. I typically talk in threes or fours. Um, there is there is a I love this word, a nefarious thing going on in executive recruitment right now, and it's not the recruiters themselves, but there is a lot of I'll call it just what it is, fraud,
Mhm.
where somebody is acting like Steve Shauck from Pick Your Executive Recruitment Firm, and if you don't do the right level of inspection, you're going to respond to that person. And what it is it's Steve Shauck at Executive Recruitment Company at Gmail. And right, but they're hiding the name. They've masked the name to where it just shows up as Steve Shauck from that firm. And you're all excited, and you go look, and oh shit, Steve's got a real profile on LinkedIn. This smells right. I know that company. This is awesome. And you respond, and then you go back and you look, and you're like, oh, it's a Gmail, and so you're getting ready to get,
Mm.
and the email is eventually going to come. Send us your resume. Oh, here's a link to a resume builder website company or whatever, right? And it's just all a scam. So there is unfortunately that, and I see that conversation more than we should see. If you go into the Pavilion Slack channel, you've seen it, I'm sure yourself, right? And it's like, hey, here's another one. Hey, here's another one. And so but you get a little bit thick skin to those, and you pick them up, and so you got to work that minefield. So that's one element that's going on right now. The other element is, I think exec recruiters are just inundated with agent applying to things, right? They're just getting buried. Everybody's getting buried because the agent can apply on your behalf, and so on and so forth. And so what I have seen, and with the various people that I've spoken with, and Carl, you and I talked about it a little bit, is the the response or just the human element is evaporating in front of us, meaning that you have a chat with somebody, you talk about an idea, you maybe have another chat, and then you never hear anything back, right?
Mhm.
And you do your follow up and all of that great stuff and blah blah blah, and you never hear anything back. That is a terrible experience that is going to leave a very bad taste in anybody's mouth about A, that search firm, and B, potentially that company. So now you have a third party search firm representing a firm that is leaving a bad perspective in a candidate's mind about the firm and the search firm. And people talk. Hey, I
Yeah.
was talking with XYZ company and we spent X amount of time. I did these things and then they never got back to me. They ghosted, so on and so forth. You may want to watch yourself at working at that company or that company. They have a bad intake process. And again, the candidate experience is your first view into the employment experience. Like if you want that to be amazing,
Mhm.
for the candidate, at least I always did. I wanted them to be delighted to be interviewing with us. I wanted them to be excited about the opportunity that we were talking about in the motion and the mission that was ahead. So you have that going on, and then the third one, which is um, to a degree, I think a bit annoying. I was talking with a mate of mine, and he was going for a role, and he couldn't get past the recruiter. Like there was a list of things that
Mhm.
the recruiter had mentioned the hiring team wanted, and he checked all the boxes at a very high clip. And so, example, they wanted the person to be a VP for 5 years or more. He had been a VP for 4 years, and he had been a senior director at two of the most iconic logos on planet Earth. I think one is Apple. He was a senior director of like 100-person team at Apple, and I think he actually did a stint with Google as well as like I mean, two iconic. But the recruiter didn't see that as one to one. You got 100+ person org at two of the most iconic brands on planet Earth as a senior director. It's going to
Yeah.
play out pretty close to a VP at a $20 million shop. Sorry, it just is. They had spent time in that vertical, and I think the vertical was manufacturing. Now they think about it, but they wanted more time in it. And the challenge was is that he'd actually spent real time in that vertical in manufacturing, and then some of his other roles had manufacturing as a attack vertical where he had a dedicated team focused on it. So he had like this uh, amalgamated amount of time in it. It just wasn't all 100% in it, and so there was. And so this third piece is they're actually becoming gatekeepers to a degree in not allowing people that I would want to meet to get through, right? Because like again, if you're asking for a purple squirrel, it's going to be really, really hard to get that thing. But if I can get you a squirrel or a purple rabbit, we should maybe talk to the squirrel
Mhm.
or the purple rabbit, right? Like we're talking horseshoes and hand grenades close. Let's get close. Um, and so I've seen that, and I've talked with a couple of, and again, C-suite. I got some friends that are CEOs, and we've talked about this, and they've even seen it as CEO opportunities have come up, and then all the way down to the individual contributor, right? Like in mentoring those team members of past. It's a very real thing right now where it's like if you do not fit that square hole, if you are not the right square peg, you may not get past the exec or the third party recruiter to even get to
Mhm.
meet the team. And so it's a very interesting time. I say that, and I understand that the third party recruiter, that firm, or if they're an individual that's Hunger and Spiegel, they need to protect their brand and only put the things forward. But again, I use the term horseshoes and hand grenades. If the person's horseshoes and hand grenades close, you should get them into the dance.
Yeah. And sometimes you're going to uncover things, or another senior leader is going to uncover things of like, oh, yeah, I didn't consider that thing because there's different roles I'm sure that you've taken in your career that you're like, well, I've had this aspect, but not specifically that thing.
Oh yeah.
And sometimes, to call it out, hey, look, by the way, your whole laundry list of things that you have, I'm at 95%. the one thing is that one thing. I don't have that. But you know
Yeah,
what? I didn't have that when I went into this vertical or this vertical or this vertical. I can learn pretty quickly.
that that and for me, I would take a generalist who is a perennial performer and a damn good human over a specialist who's been a decent performer and an okay human, right?
Hmm.
Because I think generalists, um, and maybe that's because I am one, I think we learn quick, right? You have to go learn a vertical quickly because you didn't spend a lifetime in one vertical, but you've cut across it multiple different times. And so you have to take the elements of your learning and then apply that to the new vertical or to the new thing, and you just ramp as fast as possible, probably
Hmm.
faster than most, because again, you've touched on so many um, near adjacent plays and verticals in your time. And so like the system of record is what matters. Can you build, like if you're in our chairs, can you build a system that is going to produce the outcome that the business needs? Checkbox, yes. Do you have the vertical nuance? Checkbox, no, but I learn quick,
Hmm.
right? I'll take that person. Give me him or her. I'll take them.
Well, what's interesting is I don't know if you know who John McMahon is. He wrote the Qualified Sales Leader book. It's a great book, but he was Mark Roberge's mentors, and Mark and him had a podcast, but they talked about this topic specifically, and how the reflex is to say, well, we have to hire an industry expert. And what John was actually arguing is like, it's actually not the right thing. I want to hire the best skill sets and teach people the vertical, because it's harder to teach the skill sets of the role versus teaching an industry. If you have the industry knowledge, it's harder. Sometimes it's harder. And actually, going all the way back to BlackBerry, going into the healthcare space, they were hiring nurses
Mhm.
from, and so hiring nurses to understand the specifics of the role that the nurse was doing, but had troubles translating into the business, the
Business, yeah,
B2B business world,
yeah.
because they were used to a whole different atmosphere. So sometimes you're maybe setting them up for failure.
Mhm. Yeah, I totally think about that a lot. There's one of my mentees that I think about. She's man, she's badass. She really is. And I think about the roles that as we've talked through her growth, started out in one area and then accumulated another one and then accumulated another one in her company, and has really taken on this empire building opportunity. But had they only wanted somebody that had this very narrow skill set, she would have never got the job offer.
Hmm.
What she had was the aptitude and desire to take that on. What she had was a point of view of that kind of business unit, um, and so they could teach the vertical nuance. They could teach the nuance that was needed, but because they had um, I'll say a more worldly view, what they also were able to come in and go, that's a keeper. That's not a keeper. That makes no sense. Why are you doing it that way? From a curiosity point of view, not like you're ugly, throw that out. It's why are you doing it that way? To then understand, okay, what is missing is process, right?
Hmm.
Rigor is missing, right? The operational rigor behind this, and has spent the last 5 years putting that into play, and it's allowed her to again accumulate other functions in the business that needed a strong operational leader that knew how to do organizational design and help elevate their team into one team, right? This was a team that when she took it on, if I remember correctly, was almost like the stepchild of the entire org. They're the redheaded stepchild. Like nobody wanted them. They
Yeah.
were treated poorly. They had low morale. They didn't feel like they belonged. All of those things. And now it's the most sought after group. They don't want to leave. They have opportunities to move within the org and take on elevator, and they don't want to leave. They
Hmm.
like where they are. They've built such a tribe, and it's one of the coolest things. And I actually owe her a call, but like it's one of the coolest things to see and hear about. And it's like that's how it's done. You
Hmm.
hire for you hire for the aptitude, you hire for the elements. You don't need the vertical nuance. You want skills that you cannot train embedded in person. You want curiosity in salespeople. You want urgency, right? Those are things we can't train. We can teach them how to sell the tech. We can teach them what the problems are that the tech solves. We can help them develop the talk track around current state negative impact, future state positive business outcomes. We can teach those. But if they're not curious, I don't know how to teach somebody to become curious.
Yeah, I agree. That's one of the most interesting and I think one of the most lacking skill sets from some. And it's interesting when you go through recruitment and oh, I'm high curious, great. And through the conversation they ask no questions. You're like, "Okay, well, something doesn't align." But
Yeah.
actually as you're saying this, I go back to something I learned with Jim Balsillie, who was the co-CEO of BlackBerry back in the day. And Jim would always talk about, are you a mile wide and an inch deep, or are you
Mhm.
an inch wide and a mile deep? And it seems like now, especially with the way the AI and everything is going, having that mile wide and an inch deep, then you could take any aspect. You have a much better way of handling a conversation with
Yeah.
somebody, because that's what the whole thing is. I can look specifically about that really deep aspect now with all the AI and everything. But anyways,
Yeah.
um, I appreciate all of your insights in going through this, and I just looked at the time. I said I'd get you out of here an hour, and well, I'm about to fail what I said it.
Mhm.
But
No worries.
I like to ask, to wrap up, I like to ask everybody likes new and nobody likes different. And when you do both at the same time, it can either cause friction or uncertainty. And in this example, it's both, right? So for somebody who's going into their next role and they're going through the recruitment and they get into it and they know that they have to scale, but something doesn't align, what are two or three actionable things that you would say, hey, here are the things you're going to need to do either in the recruitment phase or once you get into the role, look to do these couple of things and it'll help you put yourself in a position for success.
Yeah. I think in the recruitment phase, there's probably two things. Um, ask more questions, right? And they need to be impact questions, right? You can't ask why is water wet. But like ask the real questions, like how did you get to these numbers? Like help them to, help me understand how the sausage is made to these numbers, right? Again, I go back in time and that would have been that's a miss. The one that I would stress to anybody, again, whether you're right out of uni or it's going to be your last gig before you get a ride off into the sunset. Um, Listen to your spidey sense. Listen to that gut. If something is off, you better you owe it to yourself to go poke. You better go poke if something's off. And we all have those horror stories of where man, the team was interesting. The product was amazing, but I had this like wrinkle about the couple of the people I've met. But the product's so awesome. I really, and then you get to the place and you're like, oh boy. And there's, all kinds of scenarios like that. So I
Yeah.
tell, spidey sense, your gut, whatever you want to call it. And when you get to a place and you said scale is the thing, right? Or new or tough or whatever it is, it's it's really difficult when you get thrown in and they expect an impact immediately and you're making it a blind impact. And what I mean by that is we all have most of, two eyes and two ears and one mouth, right? It is a blessing when you get to look times two and listen times two and only have to speak times one for a certain amount of time. And when you're speaking, you're coming from a point of curiosity, not from a point of accusation. It's Karl, why did you choose to put the lion behind your left shoulder and the hockey player behind your right? Help me understand, right? And you're curious about it. Steve, why do you have various bottles of booze behind you? Why? There's a story behind each one of them, right?
Hmm.
It's those kind of things. And it's why do you guys or why have you gone at it this way with your distribution channel versus other ways that are out there? Because you want the context.
Yeah.
The context is so important. And when you're in a new role, that why. It doesn't mean that it's right in this new world era. It doesn't mean that it's wrong. But the why, especially for curious people, context is king. And so that piece would be, I think, the thing that most need to appreciate, and also make sure that that's what the team is expecting to get. Like if they're thinking you're going to come in and walk on water, I tried that once. I fell right to the bottom of the pool. I told the girls I could walk on water, and they said, "You can't, Dad." I said, "Watch this." You just don't, right? So you have to go through that. And I think the last piece, again, in Steve fashion, of three things: when you're going through the process and everything's feeling great and they make it easy for you, and you always want them to make it easy to
Yeah.
say yes, easy to say no, and they make it easy for you. Make sure that the team you're going to become a part of has the intestinal fortitude to go through the hard shit you're getting ready to go through. It's
Mm.
going to be tough. You're going to be like a new broom. If you don't know, a new broom sweeps well, because you don't know what was, right? You don't have any history. You're going to bring ideas and theories and thoughts and a perspective that is going to feel like you're moving their cheese. Um, they're going to tell you that they're in it for the hard stuff, and they may not be, and you need to inspect the bejesus out of that to make sure that they have, especially your boss, who's, the CEO, or it could be the CRO or the CMO, whoever it may be, has the intestinal fortitude to go through the stuff, because it's going to be way up here. Everybody's going to be super excited in the early days, but that valley of despair, it's coming. And
Yeah.
that's when change is really starting to happen. That's where the hard shit's getting done, but you get to come out the other side. You get to the utopian point that you're looking for, where everybody's singing everybody's praise. Oh, we're the best. Yeah. Oh, all that stuff. And we've seen it in the recent, this past, 10 days, right? With SpaceX, right? I mean, all the stories are out there where there was this valley of despair that they were going through, like, didn't even know if they were going to make it, right? If
Mm.
they were going to, and then they came out of that, right, with whichever rocket, actually sustained, so on and so forth. And now they're at this utopian place that no other company on planet Earth has ever been at, right? But they had the intestinal fortitude to go through that.
Mm.
And that is a piece that a lot of companies miss. The
Mm.
CEOs don't have the intestinal fortitude because they need change now. The board wants it now. And change has to be communicated. You have to recommunicate it. Repetition has never hurt the prayer. And so you have to tell everybody what you're doing, why you're doing it, and where you are on that journey, if you want them to be bought into it. If not, you'll be another CRO or another C suite that's lasted a year, 18 months, and you may have done great work. You may have been able to get, mission complete and all that stuff, but you're the one that's on the outside looking in.
Yeah. I like that. Repetition has never hurt the prayer. Never. I've not
Yeah.
actually heard somebody say that before, but I like that.
Well, now you have.
Yeah, it'll be added to the list of Carlisms, and I will steal shamelessly and say I heard this from my buddy Steve. So
Pay me in royalties.
yeah, that's right. Hey Steve, this we got to get you out of here. It's been a
Okay.
lot of fun. If somebody says, "Hey, I'd like to connect with Steve," where would you tell them to check you out?
If you can't find me on LinkedIn, you haven't looked. All you gotta do is just make sure you spell the last name correct, right? It's right there. I'm there. It's always up. It's on my phone. I don't hang out anywhere else really. So
Yeah.
hunt me down. I pretty much accept all, unless you're looking like a bot.
There you go. Uh, I've got a chance to get to know Steve over maybe it's a little over a year, maybe closer
Mhm.
to 2 years now.
Yeah.
And he's as genuine as you can tell right now. He's very confident in his skill sets, but he says it in a way where it draws people in that you want to listen more. And I've very much appreciated that from you over the times. I've learned so much from you, and I continue to do. And I'm so appreciative that you did this with me today. And
Amen.
I'm sure that there's more that we can do.
Anytime. I'm here. I can talk.
That's going to wrap up another episode of the Revenue Problem Solvers. Obviously, I want to thank Steve for sharing these incredibly invaluable insights and some strategy you can put into action today. Remember, success leaves clues, and every revenue problem has a solution. Sometimes you just need the right conversation to find it. Until next time, it's Karl with the Revenue Problem Solvers, helping you turn your obstacles into your opportunities. Thank you for investing time with us today. We'll see you on the next episode.